Hey guys, tonight we will listen to a heartwarming story called The Poor Farmer and the Wizard's Gift. Before we begin, please remember that this story is purely fictional and created for entertainment and storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to like the video. Long ago in the heart of America, surrounded by rolling green hills and endless golden fields, there stood a peaceful village called Willowbrook. It was a small farming community where life moved slowly, and people depended on the land for everything they had. Among the villagers lived a man named Ethan Carter. Ethan was a poor farmer. He owned a tiny piece of land, an old wooden house, and a few chickens. His father had passed away many years earlier, and his mother had died during a harsh winter. Since then, Ethan had lived alone, working from sunrise to sunset, hoping each season would bring better days. But fortune had never smiled upon him. One year, heavy rains destroyed his crops. The next year, drought dried up his fields. And when things seemed to improve, storms swept through Willowbrook and ruined everything once again. While other farmers slowly became wealthier, Ethan remained poor. Yet despite his hardships, he never complained. Every morning before beginning his work, Ethan would stand outside his house, smile at the rising sun, and say, "Thank you for another day." People often wondered how he could remain cheerful when life had given him so little. One afternoon, Ethan was returning from the village market with only a small loaf of bread and a few vegetables in his bag. As he walked through the town square, he noticed a little girl sitting beside the road. Her clothes were torn and tears ran down her cheeks. Ethan stopped. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. The girl wiped her eyes. "My mother is sick," she whispered. "We haven't eaten since yesterday." Ethan looked at the bread in his bag. It was all he had. If he gave it away, he would go to bed hungry. For a moment, he stared at the loaf. Then he smiled. Kneeling beside the girl, he handed her the bread. "Take this," he said softly. The little girl looked surprised. "But what about you?" Ethan laughed. "Don't worry about me. I've gone hungry before. Your mother needs this more than I do." The girl hugged the bread tightly. "Thank you, mister." As Ethan walked away, his stomach growled loudly, but somehow his heart felt full. That evening, dark clouds covered the sky. Heavy rain began to fall. Thunder echoed across the valley. Most people hurried inside their homes. But as Ethan approached his little house, he noticed something strange. An old man stood beside the road. He wore ragged clothes and leaned heavily on a wooden stick. Rain poured down around him. He looked weak and exhausted. "Sir," Ethan called out, "you'll catch your death standing out here." The old man slowly turned. "My son," he said with a tired voice, "I have nowhere to go." Without hesitation, Ethan smiled. "Then come with me." The old man looked surprised. "You would invite a stranger into your home?" "Of course," Ethan replied. "No one should spend a night like this alone." Inside the tiny house, Ethan lit a candle and placed the last of his vegetables into a pot. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. As the soup boiled over the fire, the old man watched silently. "You are poor," the stranger said. "Very poor." Ethan laughed softly. "Perhaps, but I still have enough to share." The old man stared into the flames. "And what if tomorrow brings even more suffering?" Ethan smiled. "Then I'll face tomorrow when it comes." "What if you lose everything?" "I'll start again." "What if nobody helps you?" "Then I'll help myself and pray for strength." The old man remained silent. Hours passed. Outside, the storm grew stronger. Finally, as midnight approached, the stranger stood up. His tired eyes suddenly became bright. His voice became stronger, and the candle flames inside the house began to dance without wind. Ethan frowned. "Sir?" Suddenly, the room filled with golden light. The walls trembled. The rain outside stopped instantly. Ethan jumped to his feet. Before his eyes, the old man's torn clothes transformed into a magnificent blue robe, decorated with shining silver symbols. His wooden stick became a crystal staff, and behind him appeared countless glowing lights floating through the air like stars. Ethan's mouth fell open. "Who are you?" he whispered. The mysterious man smiled. My name is Aldrich. I am a wizard, and for the first time in many centuries, I have found a man whose heart is richer than kings. Ethan stood frozen. He could scarcely believe his eyes. Was this real, or was he dreaming? But deep in the night, as the stars shone above Willowbrook, destiny had finally knocked upon the door of a poor farmer, and Ethan Carter's life was about to change forever. Ethan Carter stood motionless. The tiny wooden house that had always felt so ordinary was now glowing with golden light. Hundreds of tiny sparks floated through the air, like stars dancing around the mysterious stranger. The storm outside had vanished. Everything was silent. Only the crackling fire inside the room could be heard. Ethan stared at the old man, whose ragged clothes had transformed into a magnificent blue robe embroidered with silver symbols. His eyes shone like moonlight. His wooden stick had become a crystal staff. Ethan blinked several times, trying to understand what he was seeing. Who are you?" he asked again. The stranger smiled kindly. "My name is Aldrich," he said. "For more than 500 years, I have wandered across kingdoms, mountains, forests, and oceans. I have met kings, warriors, merchants, and powerful rulers. Yet very few possessed what you have." Ethan frowned. "What do I have?" Aldrich smiled. "A pure heart." The wizard slowly walked toward the fireplace. "Tonight, Ethan Carter, I came here disguised as a poor old traveler. I wish to test the hearts of the people in Willowbrook." His face became serious. "Many shut their doors before me. Some insulted me. Others chased me away. But you welcomed me into your home. You shared your food. You offered shelter. And you expected nothing in return." Ethan lowered his head. "I only did what anyone should do." Aldrich laughed softly. "No, my friend. If everyone did what they should, the world would be a much kinder place." Suddenly, the crystal staff in Aldrich's hand began to shine. The entire room trembled gently. Golden symbols appeared in the air. Ethan stepped backward. "My time in this world is growing short," Aldrich said, "and darkness is slowly returning. The powers I have protected for centuries must now be entrusted to someone worthy." Ethan's eyes widened. "Me?" The wizard nodded. "Yes. But remember, magical power is not a reward. It is a responsibility." Raising his staff high into the air, Aldrich spoke ancient words that Ethan could not understand. A circle of golden light appeared beneath Ethan's feet. Warm energy flowed through his body. Suddenly, visions filled his mind. Forests, mountains, great battles, ancient castles, and strange shadows hidden deep within the darkness. Then the light faded. Aldrich smiled. "I have given you 3 gifts." He raised one finger. "The first gift, the power of growth. Anything planted with kindness and honest labor shall flourish under your care." He raised a second finger. "The second gift, the gift of healing. You shall heal injured animals, restore dying trees, and bring life where suffering exists." Then he raised a third finger. "The third gift, the wisdom of light. When faced with difficult choices, your heart will guide you toward what is right." Ethan could hardly speak. "But why me?" Aldrich's smile slowly disappeared. "Because darkness is coming." The fire inside the house suddenly dimmed. Outside, thunder echoed far away. The wizard's eyes became serious. "There are others who seek these powers. Men whose hearts have been consumed by greed. And one day, they will come." Ethan felt fear for the first time. "What should I do?" Aldrich placed his hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Never use these gifts for selfish reasons. Never let greed control your heart. And above all, never lose your kindness." The wizard stepped toward the door. "Aren't you staying?" Ethan asked. Aldrich smiled. "Our paths will cross again. But until then, your journey begins." He raised his crystal staff. Silver light surrounded him, and in the blink of an eye, he vanished, gone, as though he had never been there. Ethan stood alone inside his little house. The fire crackled softly. Everything had become quiet once again. Had it all been a dream? Slowly he looked down, and there, resting on the wooden table, lay a strange object. It was a silver ring. Engraved upon it was the same symbol that decorated Aldrich's robe. And as Ethan touched it, the ring suddenly began to glow, far beyond the mountains. In a dark castle hidden beneath endless clouds, a pair of red eyes slowly opened. Someone had sensed the return of magic, and somewhere deep in the shadows, an ancient evil smiled. The chosen one has finally appeared. And the greatest adventure of Ethan Carter's life had only just begun. The following morning, Ethan Carter awoke before sunrise. For a moment, he lay quietly in his bed, wondering if everything that had happened the night before had only been a dream. The mysterious wizard, the glowing light, the silver ring, the three magical gifts. Slowly, Ethan sat up, and there, resting on the table beside his bed, was the silver ring. Its strange symbol shone softly beneath the morning light. Ethan stared at it. So, it was real, he whispered. Outside, the sky was clear. Birds sang happily among the trees, but Ethan's small farm remained the same. Dry, broken, almost lifeless. The memory of Aldrich's words echoed inside his mind. The power of growth. Ethan smiled nervously. Well, he laughed softly, there's only one way to find out. He picked up his old tools and walked into the field. The soil had become hard after months without rain. Most of the crops had died. Many villagers believed nothing could be saved. But Ethan refused to give up. He planted fresh seeds carefully. Then he knelt beside the ground and closed his eyes. I don't know if this will work, he whispered. But if these gifts are real, let them bring hope, not only to me, but to everyone. Suddenly, warm energy flowed through his hands. Golden light spread into the earth. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, tiny green shoots began emerging from the soil. Ethan stepped backward in shock. Before his eyes, the plants grew taller and taller. Within minutes, the field that had once been dying transformed into beautiful rows of healthy crops. Tomatoes, corn, carrots, potatoes. Everything flourished. Ethan stood speechless. Tears filled his eyes. After years of suffering, after years of hunger, hope had finally returned. But Ethan remembered Aldrich's warning. These gifts were not meant for greed. They were meant to help others. Days passed. Soon his farm became the healthiest in Willowbrook. His vegetables were larger and sweeter than anyone had ever seen. Neighbors came from all around to admire his crops. Among them was an elderly widow named Margaret Wilson. She lived alone after losing her husband many years ago. Her garden had completely died. Ethan, she said sadly, I don't know what to do anymore. My vegetables are gone. I have nothing left. Ethan smiled kindly. Don't worry, Mrs. Wilson. We'll fix it together. For 2 days, Ethan worked in her garden. Quietly, without telling anyone about his powers, he touched the soil. Golden energy flowed through the ground. 3 days later, fresh plants began growing everywhere. Mrs. Wilson burst into tears. Oh, thank heaven! She hugged Ethan tightly. You've saved me. Ethan smiled. No, Mrs. Wilson. Hope saved you. Soon, word spread throughout Willowbrook. People began saying strange things. Ethan Carter has blessed hands. Everything he touches comes back to life. His crops never fail. He even healed Jacob's injured horse. Ethan never accepted money. He only asked for kindness in return. But not everyone was happy. On the other side of Willowbrook lived Victor Blackwood. He was the richest landowner in the valley. His mansion overlooked hundreds of acres of land. For years, everyone had respected him. People depended on him. But now, villagers spoke only about Ethan Carter. Victor sat inside his grand dining hall, listening as his servant spoke. Sir, everyone is talking about Ethan. They say miracles follow him. Victor slammed his fist onto the table. A poor farmer? He growled. Impossible. No one becomes successful overnight. There must be something he's hiding. The servant lowered his head. What shall we do, sir? Victor's eyes narrowed. Watch him. I want to know everything. Meanwhile, far beyond Willowbrook, beyond the forests, beyond the mountains, hidden inside a ruined castle forgotten by time, a dark figure stood before a giant crystal. His name was Malgrim. Once, centuries ago, he had been the greatest enemy of Wizard Aldrich. But after a terrible battle, he had vanished. Everyone believed he was gone forever. Everyone, except darkness itself. Inside the crystal, Malgrim saw Ethan's face, and slowly, he smiled. So, Aldrich has chosen his successor. The shadows around him twisted like snakes. Interesting. Very interesting. His red eyes glowed with hatred. Prepare my servants. The boy must not become stronger. And bring me the ring. Outside the castle, thunder rolled across the mountains. Black clouds covered the sky, and creatures hidden within the darkness slowly opened their eyes. Meanwhile, back in Willowbrook, Ethan Carter sat peacefully beneath the stars. He had no idea that evil had awakened. He believed life was finally becoming better. But destiny had other plans. For somewhere in the darkness, the shadows had already begun moving toward Willowbrook, and the greatest battle between light and darkness had finally begun. Autumn arrived in Willowbrook. Golden leaves covered the roads, and cool winds swept across the valley. The harvest season had finally come, and for the first time in many years, laughter filled the village. Families gathered around large tables. Children ran through the fields, and everywhere people spoke of one man, Ethan Carter. The poor farmer who had once struggled to feed himself had become a symbol of hope. Yet Ethan himself remained humble. Every morning, he woke before sunrise and thanked God for another day. He continued helping his neighbors, repairing broken fences, healing injured animals, and sharing food with those in need. To him, nothing had changed. But to Victor Blackwood, everything had changed. Inside his grand mansion, Victor stood by the window, staring at Ethan's distant farm. His face was dark with jealousy. For years, he had been the richest and most respected man in Willowbrook. People once visited his house asking for help. Now they spoke only of Ethan Carter, at the market, at church, even in neighboring villages. Everywhere he went, he heard the same name, Ethan Carter. Victor hated it. One evening, his servant Samuel entered the room. "Sir," he said quietly, "people are saying that Ethan performed another miracle." Victor turned sharply. "What miracle?" "They say he healed Mrs. Harper's cow. It was dying, but now it is perfectly healthy." Victor clenched his fist. "Enough!" He slammed his hand against the table. "There are no miracles. There are only secrets, and I intend to discover his." Unknown to Victor, someone else was also watching Ethan. Far beyond the mountains, inside the ruined castle of shadows, Malgrim stood before his dark crystal. Beside him knelt a terrifying creature. It looked human, but its eyes glowed yellow, and black smoke flowed from its skin. Its name was Darius. Long ago, Darius had been a noble knight. But centuries earlier, Malgrim had corrupted his soul and transformed him into his most loyal servant. "Master," Darius said, bowing low, "what are your commands?" Malgrim's red eyes burned with hatred. "The wizard Aldrich has chosen a successor. He possesses the Ring of Light. He must be stopped before his powers awaken completely." Darius smiled coldly. "Shall I destroy him?" "No," Malgrim answered. "Not yet. Fear is stronger than death. Go to Willowbrook. Learn everything about him. And when the time is right, bring me the ring." Darius bowed. "As you command." With that, his body dissolved into black smoke and disappeared into the night. Meanwhile, in Willowbrook, Ethan was finishing his work when he heard a cry for help. He rushed toward the road and found young Tommy Harper lying beside a broken wagon. His horse had become frightened and overturned the cart. Tommy's leg was badly injured. "Ethan!" the boy cried. "Help me!" Without hesitation, Ethan knelt beside him. Warm golden light flowed from his hands. Slowly, the pain disappeared. Tommy's wounds began healing. Within minutes, he was able to stand again. His eyes widened with amazement. "Mr. Carter, what are you?" Ethan smiled nervously. "Just a farmer." But neither of them noticed the stranger standing far away beneath the trees. A tall man wearing a black cloak. Yellow eyes watched them carefully. Darius. A cruel smile appeared on his face. "So, the rumors are true. The powers have awakened." He vanished into the darkness. That same night, strange things began happening. Animals became restless. Dogs barked endlessly. birds abandoned their nests, and heavy clouds covered the moon. Inside his house, Ethan sat quietly near the fireplace. Suddenly, the silver ring on his finger began glowing, brighter than ever before. Then a familiar voice echoed inside the room. "Ethan!" He jumped to his feet. "Aldrich?" Golden light appeared near the window. The wizard slowly materialized, but something was wrong. He looked weak, very weak. "Ethan," Aldrich said urgently, "there is no time. The shadows have found you. Danger is coming to Willowbrook. And this is only the beginning." Before Ethan could speak, the wizard's image flickered. Then, with fear in his eyes, Aldrich whispered 4 words that made Ethan's blood run cold. "Do not trust everyone." And then, he disappeared, leaving Ethan alone. Outside, thunder shook the sky, and hidden among the trees, Darius smiled, because the first servant of darkness had finally arrived, and Willowbrook would never be the same again. The next morning, Willowbrook appeared peaceful. The sun rose gently above the hills. Farmers began their work. Children laughed as they walked toward school, and yet something felt different. The air was colder, the birds were strangely quiet, and for reasons he could not explain, Ethan Carter felt uneasy. He remembered Aldrich's warning, "Do not trust everyone." Those words echoed inside his mind again and again. After finishing his morning chores, Ethan walked to the market. But as he greeted familiar faces, he noticed something strange. People seemed nervous. Mrs. Harper whispered to him, "Ethan, have you seen the stranger?" "What stranger?" Ethan asked. "A tall man dressed in black. They say he arrived last night." "No one knows where he came from." Ethan forced a smile. Probably just a traveler. But deep inside, he felt something wasn't right. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of the village, the mysterious man stood beneath a giant oak tree. His black cloak moved with the wind. His yellow eyes watched everything. Darius, the servant of darkness. He smiled quietly. "So this is Willowbrook. So peaceful, so innocent. How unfortunate." Suddenly footsteps approached. Darius turned around. Standing before him was Victor Blackwood. The wealthy landowner looked annoyed. "Who are you?" Victor demanded. Darius smiled. "Someone who can help you." Victor frowned. "I don't need help." "No?" Darius replied calmly. "Then why are you so angry? Why do you hate Ethan Carter?" Victor froze. "How do you know his name?" Darius laughed softly. "Because hatred has a smell, and yours is impossible to ignore." Victor's eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" Darius stepped closer. "An alliance." Victor stared at him. "Why?" "Because we both want the same thing." Ethan Carter's secret. Greed flashed inside Victor's eyes. "What do you know?" Darius smiled. "Much more than you can imagine." Far away, Ethan was repairing Mrs. Wilson's fence when suddenly the silver ring on his finger began glowing, not with warmth, but with fear. A cold sensation ran through his body. Then for a brief moment, he saw something. A vision. Dark clouds, a ruined castle, red eyes, and a voice. "Find the chamber." The image vanished instantly. Ethan stepped backward. "What was that?" he whispered. That night, strange tremors shook Willowbrook. People rushed out of their homes, windows rattled, animals cried out in fear, and deep beneath the village, something awakened, unknown to everyone. Centuries ago, long before Willowbrook existed, Wizard Aldrich and the ancient guardians had hidden a powerful source of light beneath the valley. The Chamber of Eternity, a sacred place created to protect the world from darkness. Only the chosen successor could open it. Only the bearer of the Ring of Light could enter. And now, the seal was weakening. Inside his ruined castle, Malgrim stood before his crystal. The image of Willowbrook appeared inside it. His red eyes glowed with excitement. "At last!" The Chamber of Eternity. For 500 years I have searched for it. And now, thanks to Aldrich's foolish kindness, the boy will lead me to it. He turned toward the shadows around him. "Prepare the army." The time of hiding is over. Meanwhile, Darius sat inside Victor Blackwood's mansion. The two men drank quietly by the fire. Victor looked nervous. "Tell me," he asked, "what exactly is Ethan hiding?" Darius smiled. "Power. Enough power to make kings bow." Victor's eyes widened. "And can that power belong to someone else?" Darius leaned forward. "Oh yes. But first, we must gain his trust." Outside, lightning flashed across the sky, and in the distance, Ethan Carter stood on the porch of his little house. He looked toward the mountains. Something was calling him, something ancient, something hidden beneath Willowbrook itself. And as thunder rolled above the valley, the ground beneath his feet trembled once more, because deep below the village, behind a door sealed for centuries, a faint golden light had begun to shine again, and something inside had just awakened. Rain fell heavily over Willowbrook. Thunder echoed across the valley, and strange winds swept through the trees. The villagers stayed inside their homes, praying for the storm to pass. But Ethan Carter could not sleep. Ever since the vision he had seen, something inside him had changed. He could feel it. Something ancient was calling his name. As midnight approached, the silver ring on his finger suddenly began to glow. A warm golden light filled the room. Then, slowly, a figure appeared beside the fireplace. It was Aldrich. But unlike before, the wizard looked weak. His body flickered like a candle flame struggling against the wind. "Aldrich!" Ethan exclaimed. The old wizard smiled faintly. "Ethan, listen carefully. I cannot remain long." "What is happening?" Ethan asked. "The darkness grows stronger," Aldrich replied. "Malgrim has awakened. And his servant Darius is already among the people of Willowbrook." Ethan's heart began to race. "So the danger is real?" Aldrich nodded. "Much more real than you realize." Then the wizard reached inside his robe and pulled out an old scroll. The moment it touched Ethan's hands, strange symbols appeared across its surface. "A map?" Ethan whispered. Aldrich nodded. "This map leads to the Chamber of Eternity. It was created 500 years ago, and now it belongs to you." Ethan carefully unrolled the parchment. Mountains, forests, ancient ruins, and in the center, beneath Willowbrook itself, was a strange symbol. "What is hidden there?" Ethan asked. Aldrich's face became serious. "The crystal of light, the source of the magic that protects this world. If Malgrim gains its power, darkness will spread across the earth." Ethan looked shocked. "Then we must stop him." Aldrich smiled proudly. "That is why I chose you. But beware. The greatest danger is not always your enemy. Sometimes betrayal comes from those closest to you." Before Ethan could ask more, Aldrich's image began fading. "Ethan," he whispered, "trust your heart. And remember, true strength comes from kindness." Then the wizard disappeared, leaving only silence behind. The next morning, Ethan decided to keep the map hidden. He wrapped it carefully and placed it beneath a loose floorboard in his house. But unknown to him, someone had been watching. Victor Blackwood, hidden outside the window. He had seen everything. His eyes widened with greed. "A map," he whispered. "So that's the secret." That evening, Victor rode his horse to the old abandoned mill outside the village. Waiting inside the shadows was Darius. The servant of darkness smiled. "You have news." Victor nodded. "Ethan possesses an ancient map." Darius' yellow eyes glowed. "Excellent. And where is it?" Victor smiled proudly. "In his house." Darius stood up. "Very good. Malgrim will be pleased." Victor hesitated. "You promised me power." Darius laughed softly. "And you shall have it. But first, we need the map." Far away inside the ruined castle, Malgrim watched through his crystal. He smiled. Humans. So easy to corrupt. Meanwhile, Ethan spent the evening helping Mrs. Wilson repair her roof after the storm. As he walked home beneath the moonlight, he suddenly noticed something strange. Footprints, fresh footprints, leading toward his house. Ethan stopped. His heart pounded. Slowly, he approached the front door. It was open. He never left it open. Grabbing a lantern, Ethan stepped inside. Everything looked normal, until he reached his bedroom. The floorboard had been moved, and the map was gone. Ethan froze. "No!" His voice trembled. "No!" Someone had stolen Aldrich's map. Outside, hidden among the trees, Victor Blackwood rode away into the darkness with the scroll in his hands. And beside him walked Darius, smiling. For the first time in his life, Ethan Carter had been betrayed, and somewhere far away. Malgrim opened his eyes and whispered, "At last, the chamber of eternity shall be mine." As lightning split the sky above Willowbrook, Ethan stood alone in his empty house, unaware that the greatest battle of his life had already begun, and destiny itself was about to call him into the shadows. Ethan Carter stood motionless in the middle of his room. The floorboard had been moved, the secret compartment was empty, and the ancient map given to him by Wizard Aldrich was gone. For several moments he simply stared in disbelief. Then reality struck him. Someone had entered his home. Someone knew about the map. And somewhere out there, an enemy had taken the first step toward finding the Chamber of Eternity. Outside, rain continued to fall. Lightning flashed across the valley. Ethan sat beside the fireplace, unable to sleep. He replayed everything that had happened during the past few weeks. The stranger in black, Aldrich's warning, the mysterious visions, and now the stolen map. Suddenly, the silver ring on his finger began glowing. A familiar voice echoed inside his mind. "Ethan." He immediately stood up. "Aldrich?" Golden mist appeared in front of him. The image of the old wizard slowly formed. But once again, Aldrich looked weaker than before. "Ethan," he said softly, "the map has been stolen." "I know," Ethan replied sadly. "I failed." "No," Aldrich answered. "You have merely taken your first step. The map is only a guide. The true path cannot be seen by evil hearts." Ethan looked confused. "Then how can I find the chamber?" Aldrich raised his staff. "The ring of light will guide you. But first you must journey to the Forbidden Forest." Ethan frowned. "The Forbidden Forest?" Aldrich nodded. "Long ago I hid something there. A key. The crystal key. Without it, no one can enter the Chamber of Eternity. And without the key, Malgrim cannot fully claim the Crystal of Light." "Where is this key?" Ethan asked. "The answer lies beyond the Whispering River. But beware. The forest remembers everything, and not every creature within it serves the light." Suddenly, Aldrich's image flickered. "Time grows short, Ethan. The shadows are moving." Then he vanished. The room became silent again. Ethan looked outside the window. The storm had finally ended, and for the first time in his life, he realized that his journey could no longer remain inside Willowbrook. The next morning, he packed only the essentials: a lantern, some bread, a blanket, and his father's old pocket knife. Before leaving, he visited Mrs. Wilson. The elderly woman smiled kindly. "You're leaving, aren't you?" Ethan looked surprised. "How did you know?" Mrs. Wilson chuckled. "Old people notice things." She handed him a small silver cross. "Your mother once gave this to me. Now I want you to have it." It brought her comfort. "May it protect you too." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." As the sun rose over Willowbrook, Ethan Carter began walking toward the mountains. Unknown to him, someone watched from afar. Victor Blackwood. For days, guilt had haunted him. He had stolen the map. He had betrayed the kindest man he had ever known. But Darius had promised him power, and greed had blinded him. Yet deep inside, Victor felt fear. Because ever since he had handed over the map, strange nightmares had tormented him. He saw shadows, burning villages, and eyes glowing red in the darkness. Meanwhile, deep inside the ruined castle, Malgrim stood before the ancient scroll. He smiled wickedly. "So close. After 500 years, the Crystal of Light will finally belong to me." But as he studied the map, his smile disappeared. His eyes narrowed. "No, this is impossible. The crystal key is missing." Rage filled the Dark Lord's face. He smashed the crystal table beside him. "Find the boy! Find Ethan Carter! Kill anyone who stands in your way. Far below the castle, thousands of shadow creatures awoke. Their eyes burned like fire. Their growls echoed through the darkness, and Darius bowed before his master. As you command. Meanwhile, Ethan reached the edge of the forbidden forest. The trees were enormous. Mist covered the ground. Strange whispers floated through the air. Many travelers had entered these woods. Few had ever returned. For a moment, Ethan hesitated. Fear crept into his heart. But then he remembered Aldrich's words. True strength comes from kindness. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward. The moment his foot touched the forest path, the silver ring burst into golden light, and somewhere deep within the ancient woods, two glowing eyes slowly opened. Someone, or something, had been waiting for him, and Ethan Carter's greatest adventure had finally begun. The moment Ethan Carter stepped into the forbidden forest, an eerie silence surrounded him. The sounds of the outside world disappeared. No birds sang, no wind blew. Only the soft crunch of leaves beneath his boots echoed through the ancient woods. Towering trees blocked most of the sunlight, and a thick mist covered the ground like a blanket. Ethan tightened his grip on the lantern. For the first time since leaving Willowbrook, fear entered his heart. But he continued walking. Hours passed. The deeper he traveled, the stranger the forest became. Sometimes he heard whispers among the trees. Sometimes shadows moved where no one stood. And once, he could have sworn he saw a pair of glowing eyes staring at him from the darkness. Yet whenever he turned, there was nothing there. As evening approached, Ethan reached a narrow river. Its waters were crystal clear, but an old stone bridge stretched across it. The bridge looked ancient. Covered with moss and cracks, it seemed as though it had stood there for centuries. As Ethan stepped forward, his silver ring suddenly began glowing. He stopped. Then a deep voice echoed across the river. Who seeks passage across the bridge of memory? Ethan looked around. Who's there? He asked. Suddenly, the river beneath the bridge began to shine. A giant figure slowly emerged from the water. He was enormous, almost 10 feet tall. His body was covered in silver armor, and his long white beard reached his chest. In his hand, he carried a massive spear. His eyes glowed blue like the moon. Ethan stepped backward in shock. I am Orion, the giant declared, guardian of the ancient bridge. For 500 years, I have protected this path. No one crosses without proving the purity of their heart. Ethan swallowed nervously. I seek the crystal key. At those words, Orion's eyes widened. The chosen one. So Aldrich's successor has finally arrived. The guardian lowered his spear. But words alone mean nothing. Many have claimed to be worthy, and many have fallen. Ethan nodded. What must I do? Orion pointed toward the river. The bridge of memory reveals the truth hidden inside every soul. If darkness exists in your heart, you shall fall. But if your heart remains pure, the bridge will carry you safely. Ethan took a deep breath and stepped onto the bridge. Immediately, everything around him vanished. He found himself standing inside a vision. Suddenly, he was a child again. He saw his father, his mother, their little house. Then he remembered the terrible winter when his mother had died. Tears filled his eyes. Next, he saw years of poverty, loneliness, hunger, pain. And then, something unexpected appeared. Victor Blackwood. Ethan remembered every insult, every cruel word, every injustice. And deep inside, anger began to grow. The vision spoke. Victor betrayed you. He stole from you. He deserves punishment. Ethan closed his eyes. For a moment, he wanted revenge. But then he remembered Aldrich. He remembered kindness. Slowly, Ethan shook his head. No, I will not hate him. Hatred creates more darkness. If Victor has lost his way, then I pray he finds it again. Suddenly, the entire vision shattered. The bridge lit up with golden light, and Ethan found himself standing safely on the other side. Orion smiled proudly. Very few pass the test. You carry pain. But you do not let pain control your heart. The giant knelt before him. Forgive me, keeper of the light. Ethan looked surprised. Keeper? Orion nodded. The crystal of light has chosen you. Then the guardian reached into the river. From beneath the water, he pulled out a beautiful crystal pendant glowing with silver energy. The crystal key. He placed it into Ethan's hands. The moment Ethan touched it, powerful energy flowed through his body. Ancient symbols appeared in the sky. And far away inside his dark castle, Malgrim suddenly rose from his throne. His eyes widened with rage. No! He found it! He found the key! He smashed his throne in fury. Meanwhile, Darius stood beside him. What are your orders, master? Malgrim's voice shook with hatred. The boy must not reach the chamber. Gather the Shadow Riders and prepare the Black Dragon. Darius smiled. As you command. Back in the forest, Orion's face became serious. Ethan, listen carefully. The road ahead is far more dangerous. Beyond the mountains lies the Valley of Echoes. And there, hidden among the ruins, you will find someone you never expected to see again. Ethan frowned. Who? Orion smiled. An old friend. The last wizard. At those words, Ethan's heart stopped. Aldrich? But before Orion could answer, the ground began to shake violently. Birds fled into the sky. The river turned black, and a terrifying roar echoed through the forest. Orion's expression changed instantly. No! He has awakened. Ethan looked around nervously. What has awakened? The guardian lifted his spear, his eyes filled with fear. The black dragon, and high above the clouds, two enormous red eyes slowly opened. As darkness spread across the sky, the beast of Malgrim had finally awakened, and it was flying straight toward them. The terrifying roar echoed across the forbidden forest. Trees shook violently. The river beneath the ancient bridge turned dark, and high above the clouds, two burning red eyes stared down at the world. Ethan Carter stood frozen. What is that? He whispered. Beside him, Orion tightened his grip on his massive spear. His face, once calm and noble, had become filled with fear. The Black Dragon, the Guardian said, the most terrible creature ever created by Malgrim. Ethan looked up at the sky. A gigantic shadow passed above the clouds. Its wings blocked the moonlight. Its roar caused the earth itself to tremble. No ordinary weapon can defeat it, Orion said. And if the dragon reaches the Valley of Echoes before you do, everything will be lost. Suddenly, the crystal key hanging around Ethan's neck began glowing. Bright. Brighter than ever before. Golden light surrounded him, and then the world disappeared. Ethan found himself standing in a place he had never seen. Countless stars floated around him. Ancient towers rose in the distance. And before him stood a familiar figure, Wizard Aldrich. But this time, he was different. No longer weak, no longer fading. He appeared younger, stronger. His blue robe shone like the morning sky. Aldrich, Ethan exclaimed. The old wizard smiled warmly. Welcome, my friend. Where are we? Ethan asked. The realm of memories, Aldrich answered. It exists between life and time. Ethan stared at him. I thought you were gone. Aldrich chuckled softly. Not gone. Only waiting. He looked toward the stars. Long ago, before Willowbrook existed, Malgrim and I were brothers. Ethan's eyes widened. Brothers? Aldrich nodded sadly. We studied magic together. We protected kingdoms together. And we dreamed of bringing peace to the world. But Malgrim desired more. He became obsessed with power. He wanted immortality. He believed fear was stronger than kindness. And when I refused to follow him, Aldrich lowered his head. He chose darkness. Images appeared around them. Great castles, ancient wars, fire, dragons, and a younger Malgrim, standing beside a monstrous black creature. The Black Dragon, Aldrich whispered. Malgrim created it using forbidden magic. It cannot truly die. It only sleeps. And now, it has awakened once more. Ethan looked worried. How can I stop it? Aldrich smiled. You cannot. Ethan blinked. What? You cannot defeat darkness with strength alone. You must unite others. For even the brightest light shines stronger when shared. Then Aldrich raised his staff. A map of the world appeared. There are 4 guardians of light. Orion is one. 3 others remain. If they stand together again, hope may survive. Who are they? Ethan asked. The guardian of flames, the guardian of winds, and the guardian of time. Ethan frowned. Where can I find them? Aldrich smiled. In time. But first, you must survive what comes next. Suddenly, the sky above them cracked. A terrifying roar shook the stars. Aldrich's expression changed instantly. He's here. What? Ethan asked. But before the wizard could answer, a massive claw tore through the sky itself. The black dragon. Its red eyes burned with hatred. Its enormous head appeared among the stars. Even Aldrich stepped back. No, it's found this place. Ethan, Aldrich shouted, wake up! At once, Ethan opened his eyes. He was back in the forest. Orion stood beside him. Ethan, the giant cried, run! The black dragon descended from the clouds. Its wings created powerful storms. Trees shattered. Fire poured from its mouth. The ancient bridge exploded. Orion raised his spear. You must go! Ethan stared at him. But you'll die. The guardian smiled. For 500 years, I have protected this bridge. My duty ends today. Yours has only begun. Before Ethan could speak, Orion slammed his spear into the ground. A wall of blue light surrounded the dragon. Go! The guardian roared. With tears in his eyes, Ethan ran into the darkness of the forest. Behind him, the battle between Orion and the black dragon shook the heavens. Meanwhile, far away in Willowbrook, Victor Blackwood awoke from another terrible nightmare. He saw villages burning, children crying, and Darius standing beside a mountain of bones. Victor sat up, breathing heavily. For the first time, fear overcame greed. What have I done? He whispered. At that very moment, someone knocked on his door. Victor opened it, and his blood froze. Standing outside was Darius, smiling. Behind him stood dozens of shadow riders. Their eyes glowed yellow beneath black armor. Darius stepped forward. Good evening, Victor. Our master wishes to thank you. Victor stepped backward nervously. What do you mean? Darius smiled wider. You helped us. And now, Willowbrook belongs to darkness. Outside, thunder shook the valley. And in the distant mountains, Ethan Carter looked back one final time. A bright explosion lit up the night sky. And Orion, the guardian of the ancient bridge, was nowhere to be seen. As tears rolled down Ethan's face, he whispered, I promise, I won't let your sacrifice be in vain. But unknown to him, the greatest betrayal was still waiting, and the fate of Willowbrook was about to change forever. The night sky burned red. From the distant mountains, Ethan Carter watched the bright explosion that had swallowed the ancient bridge. Tears filled his eyes. Orion, the noble guardian, who had protected the bridge for 500 years, was gone. But there was no time to mourn. The roar of the black dragon still echoed across the heavens. Smoke rose from the forest behind him, and somewhere far away, Ethan felt a terrible pain in his heathen. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Willowbrook. Without wasting another second, Ethan began running. Hour after hour, he pushed himself through forests, over hills, and across rivers. By sunrise, he reached the top of a ridge overlooking his beloved valley. And what he saw nearly brought him to his knees. Willowbrook was burning. Black smoke rose into the sky. Homes had been destroyed. Fields were on fire. And strange creatures moved through the village streets. Shadow riders, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds. Villagers ran in fear. Children cried. Animals screamed. And above them all, darkness covered the sky like a storm. No, Ethan whispered. No. Meanwhile, inside Victor Blackwood's mansion, terror filled every corner. Victor stood surrounded by shadow riders. Darius smiled calmly. You seem surprised. Victor's face was pale. You promised me power, Darius laughed, and you received it. You helped us find the chamber. You betrayed the chosen one, and now your reward is simple. Victor trembled. What reward? Darius stepped closer. to witness the end. Suddenly, one of the servants tried to escape. Darius raised his hand. Black energy shot through the air. The poor man collapsed instantly. Victor's eyes widened in horror. No! For the first time, he realized the truth. He had not made a deal. He had sold his soul to darkness. Elsewhere, Mrs. Wilson and several villagers hid inside the church. Children cried in fear. "We're doomed," one man whispered. "There is no hope." But Mrs. Wilson stood up. "No, there is always hope. Ethan Carter will come." Just then, the church doors burst open. Everyone screamed. But standing there, covered in dust and rain, was Ethan. Mrs. Wilson smiled through her tears. "I knew you'd return." Ethan embraced her. "What happened?" "The monsters came during the night," she said. "They took many people." And Victor Blackwood disappeared. Ethan looked outside. His home, his fields, everything he loved had been destroyed. Anger rose inside him. For the first time in his life, he wanted revenge. But suddenly, the silver ring began glowing, and Aldrich's voice echoed inside his mind. "Do not let hatred consume you." Ethan closed his eyes. Slowly, his anger faded. "No," he whispered, "I will fight, but not with hatred." Outside, Darius stood in the center of the village square. He sensed Ethan's return. A cruel smile appeared on his face. "So, the little farmer has come home." Shadow riders gathered around him. Their swords glowed with dark energy. Darius raised his hand. "Bring him to me." At that moment, Ethan stepped out of the church. Villagers gasped. "Ethan, don't!" "There are too many." But Ethan walked forward, alone. Darius laughed. "Still playing the hero? You cannot stop us." Ethan looked around, at the frightened villagers, at the burning homes, at the suffering, and then he raised his hand. Golden light burst from the silver ring. The entire village trembled. Shadow riders stepped backward. Darius' smile vanished. "What?" Suddenly, hundreds of wounded trees around Willowbrook began glowing. Roots burst through the ground. Branches moved like giant arms. Nature itself had answered Ethan's call. The trees surrounded the villagers, protecting them. Darius stared in disbelief. The power of growth. So the rumors were true. Ethan stood firm. "You will not harm these people." Darius smiled once again. "Interesting. But this is only the beginning." Then he raised his hand toward the sky. Dark clouds parted, and something enormous appeared above the village. The black dragon. Its wings covered the sun. Its eyes burned like fire. People screamed in terror. Ethan looked up in horror. The beast opened its mouth. Flames gathered inside, and then a voice echoed across the sky. "Enough!" Everyone froze. Even the dragon stopped. High above the clouds, a figure surrounded by blue light descended slowly toward the earth. A man holding a staff of fire. His silver armor shone brightly, and behind him flowed a cloak made of living flames. Darius stepped backward. Impossible. The stranger landed before Ethan, and with a gentle smile he said, "Forgive me for being late. I am Ignatius, the guardian of flames, and I believe you and I have much to discuss." As the black dragon roared above them, hope had returned once again, and the battle for Willowbrook had only just begun. The people of Willowbrook stood in stunned silence. High above them, the black dragon circled through the clouds like a living nightmare. Its massive wings covered the sun, and its roar shook the earth beneath their feet. Yet standing before Ethan Carter was a man unlike any he had ever seen. His silver armor gleamed brightly. A red cloak made of living flames flowed behind him, and in his hand rested a magnificent staff crowned with a crystal of fire. The stranger smiled. "I am Ignatius, guardian of flames." Ethan stared at him. "Orion spoke of you." Ignatius nodded sadly. "And Orion was a true friend." His eyes lifted toward the heavens. "I felt his sacrifice. His spirit will forever shine among the stars." For a moment, both men stood silently. Then suddenly, the black dragon roared again. Fire rained from the sky. Ignatius raised his staff. A wall of flame appeared above the village, protecting the people below. The fire of the dragon collided with the barrier, creating an explosion that shook the valley. The villagers gasped in amazement, but Ignatius frowned. This shield will not last forever. We must move quickly. Meanwhile, inside the ruins of Victor Blackwood's mansion, Victor sat alone in darkness. His luxurious home had been destroyed. His servants had fled. Everything he had spent his life building had vanished in a single night. And worst of all, he knew it was his fault. He remembered Ethan's kindness, the countless times Ethan had helped others without expecting anything in return. And yet, out of jealousy and greed, he had betrayed him. Tears filled Victor's eyes. "What have I done?" he whispered. Suddenly, footsteps echoed through the broken halls. Victor looked up. Darius stood before him, smiling. "You look miserable," Darius said. Victor stepped backward. "Stay away from me." Darius laughed softly. "You disappoint me. You humans always regret your choices when it's too late." Victor shook his head. "I won't help you anymore." The servant of darkness smiled coldly. "You misunderstand. You don't have a choice." Shadow creatures emerged from the darkness. Victor froze, but before they could reach him, a voice thundered through the room. "Leave him." Golden light exploded around the mansion. Darius stepped back, and standing in the doorway was Ethan Carter. Victor's eyes widened. "Ethan?" Darius growled. "So you've come." Ethan stood firm. "I came for him." Victor looked down in shame. "Why?" he whispered. "After everything I've done, you should hate me." Ethan smiled sadly. "Hate won't heal anything. You made terrible choices, Victor. But everyone deserves a chance to change." Victor began crying. "No one has ever forgiven me." Ethan placed a hand on his shoulder. Then let today be the first time. For the first time in many years, Victor Blackwood wept like a child, and deep inside his heart, the darkness began to fade. Darius roared with anger. "Enough!" Black energy exploded around him. Shadow creatures charged forward. But Ignatius appeared beside Ethan. His staff blazed with fire. "Wisdom and kindness," Ignatius smiled. "Aldrich chose well." He slammed his staff into the ground. Flames surrounded the creatures, forcing them back. Darius hissed with fury. "This isn't over!" His body dissolved into black smoke and vanished. Silence returned. Ignatius looked toward the mountains. "We don't have much time. Malgrim is preparing for war. The Chamber of Eternity is awakening, and 2 more guardians remain." Ethan frowned. "The Guardian of Winds and the Guardian of Time." Ignatius nodded. "And without them, we cannot defeat Malgrim." Victor wiped away his tears. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but let me help." Ethan smiled. "The road ahead will be dangerous." Victor nodded. "I know, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make things right." As the sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains, the survivors gathered together. For the first time since the invasion, hope had returned. But far away, inside the ruined castle, Malgrim stood before his crystal. His red eyes burned with fury. "Enough! No more games." He raised his staff toward the heavens, and deep beneath the mountains, something ancient began to awaken. Massive stone doors slowly opened, chains broke, and inside the darkness, a pair of glowing blue eyes opened. Malgrim smiled. "Rise, my greatest creation, the Titan of Shadows." Lightning split the sky. The earth trembled, and even the black dragon bowed before the power that had awakened. Meanwhile, Ethan stood outside the church, staring at the stars. He had found the Guardian of Flames. Victor had returned to the light, but somewhere in the distance, a clock began to chime. Once, twice, 3 times. Ignatius suddenly turned pale. "No." Ethan looked at him. "What is it?" The Guardian of Flames whispered. "The Guardian of Time has awakened. And if he has returned, Then the final days have begun. As the cold wind swept across Willowbrook, destiny itself had begun counting down, and the greatest chapter of Ethan Carter's journey was about to begin. The night was unusually quiet. After days of destruction and fear, Willowbrook rested beneath a sky filled with countless stars. But Ethan Carter could not sleep. He stood outside the church, staring toward the distant mountains. The strange clock chimes still echoed in his mind. Beside him stood Ignatius, the guardian of flames. For the first time since Ethan had met him, the mighty guardian seemed troubled. "Who is the guardian of time?" Ethan asked. Ignatius remained silent for a moment. Then he spoke softly. "His name is Kronos, the oldest among us, the wisest, and perhaps the most dangerous." Ethan frowned. "Dangerous?" Ignatius nodded. "Time itself obeys him. He sees the past, he sees the future, and sometimes he sees things that should never be seen." Suddenly, the crystal key hanging around Ethan's neck began glowing brightly. The silver ring on his finger also came alive. Golden symbols appeared in the air, and once again, Aldrich's voice echoed around them. "The hour has come." The ground beneath Willowbrook trembled. Villagers rushed outside in fear. Then in the center of the valley, a beam of golden light shot toward the heavens. Everyone stared in amazement. The earth slowly opened. Ancient stone stairs emerged from beneath the village. A hidden path, one that had remained sealed for 500 years. Ignatius bowed his head. The chamber of eternity. Ethan took a deep breath. So this is it. But before he could move forward, Victor Blackwood stepped beside him. "You're not going alone," he said. Ethan smiled. "And neither are you." Together, Ethan, Ignatius, and Victor descended into the darkness. The stairs seemed endless. Ancient symbols covered the walls, and strange lights floated through the air. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached a giant stone door. At its center was the same symbol carved into Ethan's ring. The crystal key around his neck began to shine. Slowly, Ethan placed it into the door. The chamber shook, and with a deep rumble, the doors opened. Inside stood a breathtaking sight. A vast room filled with golden light. Waterfalls flowed along crystal walls. Ancient statues surrounded a magnificent crystal floating in the center. The crystal of light. Its beauty was beyond words. Ethan stood speechless. So this is what Malgrim wants. But before anyone could move, tick, tick, tick. A clock echoed through the chamber, and suddenly, time itself stopped. The waterfalls froze. The air became motionless. Even Ignatius could no longer move. Only Ethan remained. Then, out of the shadows, an old man appeared. He wore silver robes decorated with golden clocks. His long white hair reached his waist, and in his hand rested an hourglass glowing with blue light. His eyes held centuries of wisdom. "Welcome, Ethan Carter." Ethan stared in amazement. "Who are you?" The old man smiled gently. "I am Kronos, the guardian of time." Ethan bowed respectfully. "I've been searching for you." Kronos chuckled softly. "And I have been watching you for a very long time." He raised his hand. Instantly, visions appeared around them. Ethan saw himself as a child. He saw his parents. He saw Aldrich. He saw Orion. Then, he saw something terrifying. A future consumed by darkness. Cities burning, mountains collapsing, the black dragon destroying kingdoms, and standing above the world, Malgrim. Beside him stood the Titan of Shadows, and countless people cried out in despair. Ethan stepped backward. "No," Kronos nodded sadly. "This future will come. Unless the four guardians stand together again." Ethan looked around. "But Orion is gone." Kronos smiled. "No, guardians never truly die. They become part of the light." Suddenly, the old man's expression became serious. "Ethan, there is something I have hidden from everyone, even Aldrich." Ethan frowned. "What is it?" Kronos looked directly into his eyes. "The chosen one was never supposed to be you." Ethan froze. "What?" "The prophecy spoke of another, but fate changed because of one simple act." Ethan's voice trembled. What act? Kronos smiled warmly. The day you gave your last loaf of bread to a hungry stranger. The day you chose kindness over comfort. That act changed destiny itself. Even time could not resist it. Tears filled Ethan's eyes. You mean? Kronos nodded. You became the chosen one because of your heart. Not because of power, not because of fate, but because of kindness. At that moment, the entire chamber shook violently. Time resumed. Waterfalls flowed once more. Ignatius looked around. Ethan! Victor shouted. What was that? But before Ethan could answer, a terrifying roar echoed through the chamber. The walls cracked. The crystal of light began to flicker, and from the darkness behind them came an evil voice. Touching! Everyone turned. Standing at the entrance was Malgrim himself. His black robes moved like living shadows. His red eyes burned with hatred, and beside him stood Darius. Behind them, the Titan of Shadows, towering over everything and high above the broken ceiling. The black dragon descended. Malgrim smiled. After 500 years, we finally meet. His eyes fixed upon Ethan. So, you are the little farmer who stole my brother's heart. He raised his dark staff, and darkness flooded the chamber. As the crystal of light trembled, the final battle between light and darkness had finally begun. Darkness exploded across the chamber of eternity. The crystal of light trembled violently. Ancient walls cracked, and the roar of the black dragon echoed through the heavens. Standing at the entrance of the chamber, Malgrim smiled with cruel satisfaction. After 500 years, his moment had finally arrived. Beside him stood Darius, his loyal servant. Behind them towered the Titan of Shadows, a creature so massive that its head nearly touched the ceiling. Even Ignatius, guardian of flames, tightened his grip on his staff. Victor Blackwood stepped backward in fear, but Ethan Carter stood firm, not because he was fearless, but because he knew others depended on him. Malgrim laughed. So this is my brother's great successor? A poor farmer? How disappointing. Ethan raised his head. I don't want power. I don't want war. But I won't allow you to destroy innocent lives. Malgrim's eyes burned with hatred. Innocent lives? There are no innocent lives. There are only the strong and the weak. And with a wave of his staff, dark energy rushed toward Ethan. Before it could strike, Ignatius stepped forward. His staff burst into flames. A wall of fire blocked the attack. Not today, Ignatius said. The chamber erupted into battle. The black dragon unleashed its fire. Ignatius answered with flames of light. Darius charged forward with his dark blade. Victor grabbed a fallen sword and stood beside Ethan. I'm with you, he said. Ethan smiled. Then let's protect our home. Meanwhile, high above the battlefield, Kronos raised his hourglass. Time itself slowed. The Titan of Shadows moved more slowly. Its enormous fists froze in the air, but even Kronos struggled. The creature is too powerful, he shouted. Malgrim laughed. You old fool. The age of light is over. Suddenly, a gentle voice echoed through the chamber. Not while hope remains. Golden light appeared. Everyone stopped. Even Malgrim froze. From the crystal of light emerged a familiar figure, Wizard Aldrich, not as a memory, not as a spirit, but in radiant form. His blue robe shone brighter than the sun. Malgrim's smile vanished. Brother, Aldrich looked at him sadly. It didn't have to end like this. Malgrim's eyes filled with anger. You abandoned me. No, Aldrich replied. I tried to save you. You chose darkness, Malgrim roared. Enough! He attacked with all his power. But Aldrich raised his staff. Light and darkness collided. The entire chamber shook. Meanwhile, Ethan saw Darius preparing to strike Victor from behind. Without thinking, Ethan jumped in front of him. The dark blade pierced Ethan's shoulder. Victor's eyes widened. No! Darius smiled. Fool! But suddenly, Victor attacked. For the first time in his life, he fought not for wealth, not for pride, but to protect someone else. His sword struck Darius, The servant of darkness stumbled backward, and Ethan smiled despite the pain. You found your way back. Victor nodded through tears. You saved me. It's my turn to save others. Then the Titan of Shadows broke free from Kronos' power. The giant raised its fist, and with one strike, Kronos was thrown against the wall. Ignatius fell. Victor collapsed. Even Aldrich weakened. Malgrim laughed triumphantly. It's over. He approached the crystal of light. At last. The power is mine. But suddenly, the chamber glowed. A familiar voice echoed, then another, and another. Blue light appeared beside Ethan. Orion, the guardian of the ancient bridge. His spirit shone brilliantly. I promised I'd never leave you. Then powerful winds filled the chamber. A woman dressed in white descended from above. Her eyes sparkled like the sky. I am Zephyra, the guardian of winds. The final guardian had arrived. Together, Orion, Ignatius, Kronos, and Zephyra. The four guardians stood united once again. Malgrim's smile disappeared. No, this is impossible. Orion raised his spear. Ignatius raised his staff. Kronos lifted his hourglass. Zephyra summoned the winds, and all four spoke together. Light shall endure. Their powers merged into one beam of pure energy. It struck the Titan of Shadows. The giant roared, cracks spread across its body. Malgrim screamed in fury. The black dragon cried out in pain, and for the first time in centuries, darkness trembled. But as the light grew stronger, Aldrich suddenly turned toward Ethan. His eyes were filled with sadness. Ethan, there is one final sacrifice. Ethan's heart sank. What sacrifice? Aldrich lowered his head and quietly whispered, to destroy darkness forever. One of us must become part of the crystal. As tears formed in his eyes, Ethan realized the battle was not over, and victory itself would demand a terrible price. The chamber of eternity shook with unimaginable force. Cracks spread across the walls. The crystal of light pulsed brighter and brighter. And at the center of it all stood Ethan Carter, wounded and exhausted, staring into the sorrowful eyes of Wizard Aldrich. One of us must become part of the crystal, Aldrich repeated softly. Silence fell over the battlefield. Even Malgrim stopped. His smile slowly faded. No, he whispered. Aldrich looked toward his younger brother. Yes. The crystal was never meant to hold endless power. It was meant to hold endless sacrifice. For the first time in centuries, sadness appeared in Malgrim's eyes. Brother, he whispered. Aldrich smiled. We were never meant to be enemies. We were meant to protect the world together. But hatred had ruled Malgrim's heart for too long. He raised his staff once more. No! If I cannot have the power, no one will. Darkness exploded around him. The black dragon roared. The Titan of Shadows struggled to stand again, and the crystal of light began breaking apart. Kronos looked terrified. If the crystal shatters, everything will be lost. Ignatius raised his staff. We must stop him! But they were too weak. Orion's spirit had begun fading. Zephyra struggled to control the winds, and Aldrich himself was growing weaker. Then Ethan stepped forward. No. Everyone turned toward him. Aldrich's eyes widened. Ethan, the young farmer smiled gently. You chose me because of kindness. You taught me that power exists to help others. If someone must make the sacrifice, it should be me. No, Victor shouted. Ignatius shook his head. Absolutely not. Even Kronos stepped forward. The world still needs you. But Ethan smiled. The world needed my mother. It needed Orion. It needed so many good people. And yet they gave everything. He looked at Victor. You found hope again. He looked at Ignatius. You protected those who couldn't protect themselves. He looked at Kronos. You guarded time itself. And finally he looked at Aldrich. You gave me a purpose. Tears flowed from Aldrich's eyes. You truly are greater than I ever imagined. Then something unexpected happened. Malgrim lowered his staff. His hands trembled. He stared at Ethan in disbelief. You would sacrifice yourself? For strangers? Ethan smiled. They're not strangers. They're my family. Suddenly, memories flooded Malgrim's mind. He remembered the young Aldrich, their dreams, their laughter, their promise to protect others. And for the first time in 500 years, Malgrim cried, "No!" He fell to his knees. "No!" His voice broke. "What have I become?" Aldrich walked toward him. Despite everything, he embraced his brother. "I never stopped loving you." Malgrim looked up in shock. "After everything I've done?" Aldrich smiled. "You're still my brother." At that moment, darkness surrounding Malgrim began to disappear. Darius screamed, "No!" His body started breaking apart. "The master belongs to darkness." Shadow creatures vanished. The black dragon cried out in agony. The titan of shadows crumbled into dust. Malgrim looked toward the crystal. "I understand now." He stood up slowly. "No, Ethan. This burden belongs to me." Aldrich shook his head. "Brother," Malgrim smiled sadly. "For centuries I brought pain. I stole lives. I destroyed hope. Let me give something back." He looked at Ethan. "You showed me something I had forgotten. Kindness." Then for the first time in centuries, Malgrim smiled. Not with hatred, not with pride, but with peace. He raised his staff. Golden light and darkness surrounded him together. And before anyone could stop him, he entered the crystal of light. A blinding explosion filled the chamber. Everyone covered their eyes. The black dragon disappeared. Darius turned into dust, and silence fell. Slowly, the light faded. The crystal of light floated peacefully once again, brighter than ever before. The war was over. Darkness had fallen, and Malgrim, the Lord of Shadows, had redeemed himself. Tears rolled down Aldrich's face. "Farewell, brother," Orion smiled. Kronos lowered his head. Zephyra closed her eyes, and Ignatius whispered, "May you finally rest." As dawn rose above the valley, sunlight entered the chamber of eternity for the first time in 500 years. But as everyone stood in silence, Kronos suddenly frowned. He stared into the future, and his face became pale. "No!" Ethan looked at him. "What is it?" The guardian of time whispered 3 words. "Something survived." And deep beneath the ruins, hidden in absolute darkness, 2 yellow eyes slowly opened. Darius, still alive. And he was smiling. The first rays of dawn touched the valley of Willowbrook. For the first time in centuries, peace had returned. The black dragon was gone. The titan of shadows had fallen. And Malgrim, once feared as the Lord of Shadows, had sacrificed himself to restore the crystal of light. Inside the chamber of eternity, silence filled the air. Everyone stood quietly. Aldrich stared at the crystal, tears in his eyes. "Farewell, brother," he whispered. But beside him, Kronos remained troubled. His ancient eyes had seen something hidden, something that should not have survived. "Darius," he said quietly. Ethan looked toward him. "He's alive, isn't he?" Kronos nodded. "Yes, but he is weak. Without Malgrim, he has no master. His darkness will fade with time." Ignatius smiled. "Then let him hide. He no longer controls our future." Orion's spirit stepped forward. The age of war is over, and the age of hope begins. The 4 guardians stood together once more. For a brief moment, the world felt whole again. Then Orion's body slowly began turning into light. Ignatius smiled sadly. "My old friend," Orion nodded. "My duty is complete." He looked at Ethan. "You gave me hope, Keeper of the Light. You reminded us all why we fought." And with one final smile, the guardian of the ancient bridge became 1,000 stars and disappeared into the heavens. Ethan lowered his head. "Thank you, my friend." Soon after, the chamber of eternity sealed itself once more. The crystal of light remained hidden beneath Willowbrook, protected, safe. As weeks passed, the valley slowly recovered. Burned homes were rebuilt. Fields became green again, Children laughed once more, and Ethan Carter returned to the life he loved most: farming, helping neighbors, and living peacefully. But now he was no longer alone. Victor Blackwood had changed completely. He sold most of his wealth and spent his days helping rebuild the village. Mrs. Wilson often laughed. "I never thought I'd see the day when Victor Blackwood fixed fences for free." Everyone laughed, even Victor, because happiness had finally found him. Meanwhile, Ignatius and Zephyra traveled across distant lands, helping those in need. Kronos returned to his tower beyond time, and Aldrich chose to remain near Willowbrook, not as a wizard, but as an old traveler, just as Ethan had first met him. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the hills, Ethan and Aldrich sat beneath the great oak tree where everything had begun. "You know," Aldrich said with a smile, "when I first met you, I thought I had found a kind man." Ethan laughed. "And?" Aldrich looked toward the sunset. "I found much more." They sat quietly for a while. Then Ethan asked, "Do you think the world will always have darkness?" Aldrich smiled. "Yes. There will always be greed. There will always be hatred. There will always be fear. But there will also be kindness. There will also be courage. And there will always be ordinary people willing to help others." The old wizard looked at Ethan. "And as long as kindness exists, light will never disappear." Years passed. Children grew up hearing stories about a poor farmer named Ethan Carter. Some believed he was just a legend. Others believed he had been blessed by angels, and many simply remembered him as the kind man who never turned away anyone in need. People came from distant places to visit Willowbrook, not because of treasure, not because of magic, but because of hope. And near the entrance of the village stood a simple statue, not of a king, not of a warrior, but of a humble farmer carrying a loaf of bread. At its base were written these words: "True greatness is not measured by power, it is measured by kindness." One peaceful evening, many years later, an elderly Ethan Carter stood beneath the stars. He smiled at the fields he had loved his entire life. He looked up at the sky, and somewhere among the stars, he could almost hear familiar voices: Orion, Ignatius, Zephyra, Kronos, and Aldrich, smiling, watching, protecting. Ethan closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you." And far above the world, a new star appeared in the heavens, a star brighter than the rest. And the people of Willowbrook would forever say, whenever you see that star shining in the night sky, remember the poor farmer who changed the world. And so the legend of Ethan Carter lived on, forever.